Have you ever felt like you were trapped in an emotional washing machine, spinning endlessly between hope that this time will be different, crushing rejection when it's not, and complete confusion about what just happened and why you keep going back for more? The invisible cycle of hope, rejection, and confusion represents one of the most psychologically devastating patterns in human relationships. Yet it operates so subtly that most people don't realize they're caught in it until they've lost themselves completely. When someone with avoidant attachment pulls you into this cycle, they create a psychological prison where you become addicted to the very behavior that destroys your peace of mind. This cycle doesn't announce itself with obvious red flags or dramatic confrontations. Instead, it whispers sweet possibilities in your ear while slowly eroding your sense of reality and self-worth. Understanding how this invisible cycle works will help you recognize when you've become trapped in a pattern that masquerades as love, but actually functions as psychological torture. The insights you'll discover today will explain why intelligent, confident people can find themselves making excuses for behavior they would never tolerate from anyone else, why each rejection somehow makes you more determined to prove your worth, and why the confusion feels almost more painful than the rejection itself. This knowledge isn't just about understanding relationship dynamics, it's about recognizing how your brain's natural hope and attachment systems can be weaponized against you by people who understand how to keep you psychologically dependent on their inconsistent attention. The patterns revealed here will show you how hope becomes a trap when it's constantly renewed by someone who has mastered the art of giving just enough to keep you believing while taking everything they need to maintain power over your emotions. Most importantly, you'll learn to distinguish between healthy hope that leads to genuine connection and toxic hope that keeps you imprisoned in cycles of emotional abuse disguised as relationship challenges. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Picture a sunny Saturday morning in Los Angeles where Rachel Green from the TV show Friends sat in her favorite coffee shop, rereading a text message that had arrived at 2:47 a.m. the previous night. The message was from someone she had been seeing for 5 months, though seeing felt like too strong a word for whatever their relationship had become. The text read, "I miss talking to you. I know I've been distant lately, but you mean a lot to me. Can we start over?" Rachel's heart had leapt when she first read those words, flooding her with the familiar rush of hope that always came when he reached out after periods of silence. This pattern had been their relationship's defining characteristic from the very beginning. He would be intensely present for days or weeks, texting constantly, making plans, sharing intimate thoughts and feelings that made Rachel feel like she was finally seeing the real him. During these periods, she felt like she was living in a romantic movie. He would say things like, "You're different from anyone I've ever met," and "I can't believe how easy it is to talk to you." These moments felt so genuine and powerful that they would erase all memory of the confusion and pain that came before. But inevitably, something would shift. The shift was never dramatic or obvious. There wasn't a fight or a clear moment when things went wrong. Instead, his messages would gradually become shorter and less frequent. Plans would be made, but then cancelled at the last minute with vague excuses about work or family obligations. When Rachel would try to address the change or ask if everything was okay, he would respond with confusion, claiming nothing had changed and she was being too sensitive or reading too much into things. The rejection phase was the most devastating part of the cycle because it never felt like actual rejection. He wouldn't break up with her or say he wasn't interested. Instead, he would become a ghost of himself, physically present but emotionally absent, responding to her messages with polite but distant replies that left her feeling like she was bothering him by existing. When she would try to reconnect or recapture the intimacy they had shared, he would respond with phrases like, "I don't know what you want from me," or "You're being really intense right now." The confusion was perhaps the most damaging element because it prevented Rachel from processing what was actually happening to her. Each time he pulled away, she would spend days or weeks analyzing every interaction, trying to figure out what she had done wrong or what had changed. The lack of clear explanation for his behavior made it impossible for her to find closure or move forward. Instead, she remained in a constant state of emotional suspension, waiting for clarity that never came. What made this cycle particularly insidious was how it trained Rachel's brain to associate him with both intense pleasure and intense pain. During the hope phase, she would experience genuine joy and excitement about their connection. During the rejection phase, she would experience real grief and loss. This emotional intensity created a trauma bond where her brain began to crave him, not despite the pain he caused, but because of the relief that came when the pain temporarily stopped. The turning point came when Rachel realized she had started planning her entire life around his moods and availability. She would turn down plans with friends on the chance that he might want to see her. She would spend hours crafting the perfect text responses to avoid triggering his withdrawal. She had stopped trusting her own perceptions of their interactions because he consistently remembered things differently than she did. The breakthrough moment arrived when Rachel's friend Monica Geller from the same show asked her a simple question. "When was the last time you felt genuinely peaceful about this relationship?" Rachel realized she couldn't remember a single moment when she wasn't either anxiously waiting for his next move or desperately trying to return to a previous high point. Even during the good times, she was unconsciously bracing for the next inevitable withdrawal. The revelation deepened when Rachel started documenting their cycle in a journal. The pattern became crystal clear. Every period of closeness was followed by withdrawal, every withdrawal was followed by renewed pursuit from her, and every successful reconnection reset the cycle rather than building toward greater stability. She realized that his periodic returns weren't evidence that their connection was real. They were the mechanism that kept the cycle running. The most shocking discovery was that his behavior wasn't random or due to his own confusion about his feelings. The cycle was remarkably consistent. He would pull her in with intensity and vulnerability, create deep emotional and physical intimacy, then systematically withdraw while denying that anything had changed. When the withdrawal had gone on long enough to make her desperate, he would return with just enough warmth and promise to restart the entire process. Rachel finally understood that she wasn't in a relationship that was struggling to find its footing. She was trapped in a psychological experiment where her emotional responses were being carefully calibrated to keep her attached to someone who was fundamentally unavailable. The hope wasn't a natural response to genuine possibility. It was a trained response to intermittent reinforcement. The rejection wasn't about his inability to connect. It was about his need to maintain power and control. The confusion wasn't about mixed messages. It was about deliberate reality distortion designed to prevent her from seeing the pattern clearly enough to escape it. The final piece of understanding came when Rachel realized that her desperate attempts to fix their connection weren't love. They were addiction. She had become psychologically dependent on the chemical rush that came from occasional relief from the anxiety he created. She wasn't fighting for their relationship. She was fighting for her next fix of the drug that his attention had become. Breaking free from the invisible cycle of hope, rejection, and confusion requires first recognizing that you're dealing with a deliberate pattern, not random relationship challenges that can be solved through better communication or more patience. The first step is to start documenting interactions and looking for the repetitive nature of the cycle. If you notice that periods of closeness are consistently followed by withdrawal, that your attempts to address problems result in being told you're imagining things, and that reconciliations feel like relief from anxiety rather than genuine joy about connection. You're trapped in this cycle. Second, understand that the hope you feel during the reconnection phase isn't based on real evidence that things will be different. It's your brain's conditioned response to intermittent reinforcement. The intensity of relief you feel when they return to being warm and available is proportional to the anxiety and pain you experienced during their withdrawal. This creates an artificial sense that the good times are extraordinarily special when they're actually just the temporary cessation of deliberately created emotional distress. Third, recognize that the confusion you experience isn't due to your inability to understand the situation. It's a deliberate result of someone giving you mixed messages and contradictory information about their feelings and intentions. People who operate this cycle are often skilled at making their behavior seem reasonable in isolation, while the overall pattern is clearly manipulative and harmful. Fourth, break the cycle by refusing to participate in the reconciliation phase. This is often the hardest step because it requires resisting the very relief and hope that your brain has been trained to crave. But understand that each time you accept their return without addressing the pattern, you're reinforcing the cycle and teaching them that this strategy works to keep you attached. Most importantly, learn to distinguish between genuine relationship growth and cycling behavior. Real growth involves acknowledgement of harmful patterns, concrete changes in behavior, and consistency over time. Cycling behavior involves repeated promises to do better, followed by identical patterns of withdrawal and return. The person who keeps you in this cycle isn't struggling with commitment or working through attachment issues. They're using your natural human psychology against you to maintain power and control while avoiding genuine intimacy. Remember that healthy relationships move toward greater stability and security over time, not toward more intense cycles of connection and disconnection. The person who truly cares about you will work to make you feel more secure in the relationship, not less secure but more addicted to their inconsistent attention. The invisible cycle of hope, rejection, and confusion represents one of the most psychologically damaging relationship patterns because it exploits the very human capacities that make us capable of love, our ability to hope, our willingness to forgive, and our desire to understand and connect with others. When these beautiful aspects of human nature are weaponized by someone who understands how to manipulate attachment psychology, the result is a form of emotional imprisonment that can persist for years. The cycle is particularly devastating because it prevents the natural healing that would occur after a clear rejection or breakup. Instead of being able to grieve the loss of a relationship and move forward, you remain suspended in a state of perpetual possibility, always believing that the next reconciliation might be the one that finally leads to lasting connection. This hope becomes a poison that prevents you from accepting reality and protecting yourself from further harm. What makes this cycle truly invisible is how it masquerades as the natural ups and downs of a relationship finding its rhythm. The person orchestrating the cycle will often frame their behavior as working through their own issues or needing space to process their feelings. They'll position the cycle as evidence that you're both fighting for something real, rather than evidence that they're systematically manipulating your attachment system to keep you available without having to offer genuine commitment or consistency. Breaking free requires recognizing that this isn't about love conquering obstacles or patience being rewarded. It's about psychological manipulation disguised as romantic complexity. The intense feelings you have aren't proof that this person is your soulmate. They're proof that your brain chemistry has been hijacked by someone who understands how to create artificial intensity through the strategic application of hope and disappointment. You deserve relationships that feel like steady ground beneath your feet, not like emotional earthquakes that keep you constantly off balance. You deserve partners who make you feel more secure over time, not less secure but more desperately attached. You deserve love that builds your confidence and peace of mind, not love that requires you to surrender your sanity to maintain your connection. The path forward involves learning to recognize the cycle early, refusing to participate in the reconciliation phase that restarts it, and finding the courage to choose uncertainty about your future over certainty about continued emotional abuse. Most importantly, it means remembering that real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your mental health, and that the right person will offer you consistency and security, rather than keeping you trapped in cycles of manufactured hope and inevitable disappointment. Once you see the cycle, the next step is clear. Watch when love feels like punishment, avoidance, and emotional withdrawal.